You wake up on a Saturday morning and there it is, that quiet pull towards something you've always wanted to try. Maybe it's a language, maybe it's an instrument, maybe it's writing, maybe it's a craft, maybe it's a whole new career direction you've been circling for years. And by Sunday night, it's gone. Not because you're lazy. Not because you don't care. But because somewhere between Saturday morning and Sunday evening, you felt the sting of being bad at something, and that sting was more than your ego could survive. Here's what nobody tells you: that reflex, that flinch, that quiet retreat the moment competence disappears, that is the single reason you never become exceptional at anything. Not your talent. Not your circumstances. Not your upbringing. Your inability to tolerate the feeling of being a beginner. Greatness isn't born from talent or ambition. Greatness is earned by your willingness to be visibly bad at something for longer than your ego can stand. That's it. That's the whole door. And almost no one walks through it. Most people never become great at anything because they never let themselves be bad at anything long enough to get good. They hit the wall of incompetence and they interpret it as a verdict. Not a phase, not a wall, not a necessary passage, but a final judgment. A verdict on their worth, their intelligence, their potential. And so they leave. They leave the guitar in the corner. They close the notebook. They delete the app. They abandon the idea. They tell themselves they just weren't meant for it. They say it wasn't a good fit. They say they didn't have time. But the truth nobody wants to say out loud is simpler and more painful than any of those excuses. They couldn't handle feeling like a fool. And feeling like a fool is the price of admission to every meaningful skill on this planet. Think about how children learn. A child learning to walk doesn't fall down once and think, well, I suppose walking isn't for me. A child doesn't interpret a fall as a referendum on their identity. They just get back up. Not because they're brave, not because they're disciplined, but because they haven't yet learned to be ashamed of failing. They haven't yet absorbed the poisonous idea that incompetence is something to hide. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, most people unlearn the one skill that makes every other skill possible. They learn to be embarrassed by their own beginning. And that embarrassment becomes a life sentence. Here's what nobody tells you about the path to mastery. There is a phase that every great practitioner in every field has passed through, and it is the phase most people spend their entire lives running from. You can call it the apprenticeship. You can call it the beginner's mind. You can call it the valley. Whatever you call it, it is the long, unglamorous stretch of time during which you know less than everyone around you, you produce work that embarrasses you, and your only job is to absorb. Not to impress. Not to express. Not to stand out. To absorb. The Stoics understood this instinctively. Marcus Aurelius, a man who held more power than almost anyone alive today could comprehend, wrote reminders to himself to learn from the people around him without ranking himself against them. Not to compare. Not to compete. Not to prove. To learn. He didn't say, find people worse than you and feel good about yourself. He didn't say, find people better than you and feel jealous. He said, learn from everyone. The arrogant one teaches you what arrogance costs. The patient one teaches you what patience builds. The fool teaches you what avoidance of truth looks like. Everyone is a teacher if you stop trying to be the star of every room you walk into. But here's the thing about the apprenticeship phase that makes it so brutal. It requires you to deliberately suppress your ego. Not suppress your personality. Not suppress your voice. Suppress your ego. That voice that says, I should be further along by now. That voice that says, people younger than me are already great at this. That voice that says, if I weren't good at this by now, I probably never will be. That voice is not your friend. That voice is not protecting you. That voice is keeping you exactly where you are, in the narrow zone of things you already do acceptably well, while everything you actually want remains just out of reach. You still don't feel whole, do you? You still feel like there's a version of you that exists somewhere in the future, more capable, more refined, more complete, and you can't figure out how to close the gap. Here's how. You walk through the door of being a beginner and you stay there until it stops hurting. Not until it stops being uncomfortable. It will always be somewhat uncomfortable. But until it stops hurting. Until the discomfort becomes familiar terrain rather than a signal to retreat. Let me paint you a picture of what this actually looks like, because I think most people misunderstand what the apprenticeship phase is. They imagine it as a formal arrangement, a young person shadowing an old master in a workshop. And sure, that's one version. But the apprenticeship phase is really a mental posture. It's a way of relating to your own incompetence that doesn't involve shame. It's the decision to walk into a room where everyone knows more than you and to feel curiosity instead of threat. It's the willingness to ask the stupid question, to make the obvious mistake, to produce the ugly first draft, to play the wrong note, to write the clumsy sentence, to build the crooked shelf, and to do it all without narrating a story about how you're not good enough. There's a difference between knowing you're not good enough yet and telling yourself you're not good enough. The first is an observation. The second is an identity. The first is useful. The second is poison. And most people can't tell the difference. They fuse the observation with the identity. They feel the sting of incompetence and they don't say, I'm not good at this yet. They say, I'm not good. Period. Full stop. As if competence is a fixed trait rather than a trainable skill. As if being bad at something on a Tuesday means being bad at everything forever. Here's what nobody tells you. The feeling of being bad at something new is not a signal to stop. It's a signal that you've entered the only phase where real growth happens. The discomfort is not a warning. The discomfort is the environment. You don't go around it. You go through it. And the people who go through it are not braver than you. They are not more confident than you. They are not more talented than you. They have simply made a different calculation. They have decided that the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of being a beginner. And that calculation changes everything. Most people call this quitting. The Stoics would call it a surrender. Not a surrender to the difficulty of the task, but a surrender to the ego's demand for comfort. Your ego doesn't want you to be great. Your ego wants you to be safe. Your ego wants you to look good, to feel good, to be perceived as competent and capable and in control. And being a beginner offers none of those things. Being a beginner offers humiliation, confusion, and the slow, grinding repetition of fundamentals that feel beneath you. Your ego looks at that menu and says, no thank you. And you listen. And you stay the same. And another year passes. And you still don't feel like yourself. Let me tell you something about the nature of skill acquisition that I think will change how you see this entire process. When you start learning something new, your brain has to build new neural pathways. This is not a metaphor. This is biology. Your brain is literally rewiring itself, creating connections that didn't exist before, strengthening synapses, pruning inefficient patterns. And this process is not smooth. It is not linear. It is not satisfying in the moment. It is repetitive, boring, and frequently feels like you're going nowhere. You practice the same scale on the piano for the 50th time and it still doesn't sound right. You write the same kind of paragraph for the 30th time and it still feels clunky. You attempt the same technique in your craft for the 100th time and it still doesn't click. And your brain says, "This isn't working." And your ego says, "See, I told you." And you want to quit. But here's what's actually happening beneath the surface. Your brain is consolidating. It's taking the chaotic, conscious effort of learning something new and slowly converting it into unconscious competence. But this conversion doesn't happen on your timeline. It happens on its own timeline. And there are long stretches where nothing visible is happening, where you feel like you're treading water, where you can't see any progress at all. These stretches are not failures. They are the process. The brain needs repetition and time and yes, boredom, to internalize the patterns that will eventually become effortless. The boredom is not a bug. The boredom is the feature. It is the signal that the deep work is happening beneath the level of your conscious awareness. The people who push through these periods of boredom and frustration, the people who sit with the feeling of going nowhere and keep going anyway, those are the people who emerge on the other side with skills that look like magic to everyone else. And the people who quit during these periods, who interpret boredom as failure and frustration as a sign to move on, those are the people who spend their entire lives sampling the surface of 100 different things and never going deep in any of them. They are the eternal beginners, not because they keep starting, but because they keep stopping. So let me give you something concrete, because I don't want to leave you with abstraction. I want you to walk away from this knowing exactly what to do. Here's the practice. The first thing you need to do is separate your identity from your competence. When you start something new, you are going to be bad at it. That is not a statement about you. That is a statement about the nature of beginning. A seed is not a failed tree. A beginner is not a failed master. Stop fusing the quality of your early work with the quality of your character. They are not the same thing. Your early work is supposed to be bad. That's what early means. The second thing. Stop comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. This is the most common and most destructive habit of the aspiring beginner. You start writing and you compare your first draft to someone who's been writing for 15 years. You start painting and you hold your first canvas next to someone who's been painting for a decade. You start learning a language and you feel stupid because your coworker is fluent. Here's what nobody tells you about that person you're comparing yourself to. They were exactly where you are now. They felt exactly as stupid as you feel. They produced work exactly as bad as yours. And they kept going. The difference between you and them is not talent. The difference between you and them is time and persistence. That's it. Stop comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20. The third thing. Find someone who is better than you and attach yourself to them. Not metaphorically. Literally. The apprenticeship phase is not something you can do alone. You need people who are ahead of you, people who can see your blind spots, people who can tell you the thing you don't want to hear. Marcus Aurelius had teachers. He named them. He thanked them. He didn't pretend he figured it all out on his own. The greatest masters in history were students first, and the greatest students had teachers. Humility is not weakness. Humility is the willingness to be taught. And the willingness to be taught is the single most undervalued skill in a culture that worships self-made myths. The fourth thing. Set a minimum threshold of engagement that has nothing to do with quality. When you're a beginner, you cannot judge your work by its quality because your standards will always exceed your current ability. That gap between taste and skill, that gap is going to torture you. You can see what good work looks like. You know what excellence is. You have taste. But your hands can't produce it yet. And that gap between knowing and doing is the most painful gap in the learning process. So don't measure quality. Measure consistency. Did you show up today? Did you put in the reps? Did you sit with the discomfort for the allotted time? That's the only metric that matters in the beginning. Quality comes later. Quality comes as a byproduct of volume. You produce enough bad work and good work starts emerging on its own. But you have to earn the right to good work by producing the bad work first. The fifth thing. Reframe the emotional cost of being bad at something. Most people experience the discomfort of incompetence as shame. They feel it in their chest, this tight, hot, contracting sensation that says, everyone can see how bad I am. Everyone is judging me. Everyone knows I don't belong here. Here's the reframe. Nobody is watching you. Nobody is thinking about you. Everyone is too busy worrying about their own incompetence to notice yours. The audience you fear doesn't exist. The judgment you feel is your own ego projecting its demands onto an indifferent world. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus reminded his students that the things that upset us are not the events themselves but our judgments about those events. The feeling of being bad at something isn't inherently painful. It's the story you tell yourself about being bad at something that's painful. It's the meaning you attach to it. I'm bad at this, therefore I'm not good enough. I'm bad at this, therefore I'm falling behind. I'm bad at this, therefore I'm wasting my time. Change the story. I'm bad at this, therefore I'm learning. I'm bad at this, therefore I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm bad at this, therefore I'm doing the work that most people refuse to do. The sixth thing. Stop looking for shortcuts. This is the one that hurts the most because the entire modern world is engineered to sell you shortcuts. 10 minutes to abs. 5 days to fluency. 1 weekend to mastery. The shortcut industry is a multi-billion-dollar machine built on the precise weakness I'm describing to you right now. It preys on your inability to tolerate the beginner's phase. It says, you don't have to feel incompetent. You don't have to be bad at anything. You can skip the pain. And you buy it. And it doesn't work. And you blame yourself. And you quit. And the cycle repeats. Here's what nobody tells you about shortcuts. They don't skip the work. They skip the growth. You arrive at a version of competence that is hollow, that cracks under pressure, that cannot adapt, because it was never built on a foundation of deep understanding. The apprenticeship phase cannot be shortcut because the apprenticeship phase is the foundation. Skip it and you build on sand. The seventh thing. And this might be the most important one. Learn to sit in the room where you are the least knowledgeable person and feel at home. This is a skill. This is a trainable, learnable, specific skill. Most people walk into a room where everyone knows more than them and their body reacts. Their shoulders tighten. Their breathing gets shallow. Their mind starts scanning for exit strategies. They either shut down completely or they overcompensate by pretending to know things they don't. Both responses are ego defenses. Both responses prevent learning. The practice is to walk into that room, to feel the discomfort, to name it, to sit with it, and to stay. To ask the question that feels stupid. To admit what you don't know. To be the one who raises their hand and says, I don't understand, can you explain that again? And to do it without apologizing for your ignorance. Your ignorance is not a flaw. Your ignorance is the raw material of your growth. Without it, you have nothing to learn. And if you have nothing to learn, you have nothing to become. Now I want to talk about what comes after the apprenticeship, because I think it's important to understand the full arc. The apprenticeship phase isn't the destination. It's the passage. And on the other side of it, if you survive it without shortcuts, without quitting, without collapsing into self-judgment, something opens up. You can call it the creative active phase. This is where you stop absorbing and start producing. This is where you take everything you've learned and you begin to make it your own. You stop imitating and you start innovating. You stop following the rules and you start bending them. You stop being a student of the craft and you start being a voice within the craft. But here's the thing that nobody tells you about this phase. It only opens to those who survived the apprenticeship without shortcuts. You cannot fake your way into the creative active phase. You cannot buy a ticket. You cannot hack the door. The door opens from the inside, and it only opens when the foundation is deep enough to support the weight of what you're about to build. People who shortcut the apprenticeship phase and jump straight to creative expression produce work that is derivative, fragile, and forgettable. It looks like creativity, but it's really costume. Real creativity, the kind that changes fields and moves people and endures, only comes from someone who has internalized the fundamentals so deeply that they no longer have to think about them. And that internalization only comes from years of patient, humble, repetitive practice. There is no other path. And here's the paradox that ties all of this together. The greatest masters, the ones who make it through the apprenticeship and into the creative active phase and beyond, they never stop being beginners. They never lose the student's mind. They reach the highest level of their field and they still walk into rooms where they know less than everyone else, and they still feel curiosity instead of threat. They still ask questions. They still make mistakes. They still produce work that disappoints them. Because they understand something that most people never figure out. The beginner's mind is not a phase you graduate from. The beginner's mind is the operating system of mastery itself. The moment you decide you're no longer a beginner is the moment you stop growing. And the moment you stop growing is the moment you start declining. There is no standing still. You are either learning or you are eroding. This is what I want you to understand about yourself and about the thing you've been wanting to start. The reason you haven't started it, or the reason you started it and quit, is not that you lack talent or time or discipline or willpower. The reason is that you have been unwilling to feel like a beginner. You have been unwilling to sit in the discomfort of your own incompetence and stay. And I get it. It's painful. It's genuinely painful. It touches something deep, something old, something that formed long before you had the language to understand it. Maybe someone laughed at you once. Maybe someone told you that you weren't naturally gifted. Maybe you absorbed the message that if you weren't immediately good at something, you never would be. Maybe the culture around you taught you that competence is identity and incompetence is failure. Whatever it was, it built a reflex. And that reflex is running your life. And it is costing you everything. It's costing you the thing you would have been great at. It's costing you the version of yourself that exists on the other side of the apprenticeship. It's costing you the deep satisfaction that only comes from having earned a skill through years of patient, humble work. It's costing you the respect you would have for yourself if you could look back and say, I was terrible at this, and I kept going anyway. That self-respect, the kind that comes from having survived your own incompetence, that is worth more than any talent. That is worth more than any natural ability. That is the foundation of every quiet, unshakable confidence you've ever admired in someone else. They didn't get it from being good. They got it from being bad and refusing to leave. So here's what I want you to do. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. You will never feel ready. Feeling ready is a myth that your ego invented to keep you in place. Right now, today, pick the thing. You know what it is. You've known what it is for months, maybe years. Pick it and start. And when the discomfort comes, and it will come, and it will come fast, and it will come hard, and it will whisper every lie your ego has ever told you about why you should stop, when it comes, do not interpret it as a signal. Interpret it as a landmark. You are in the place where growth happens. You are in the place where most people turn around. And you are not most people. Or at least, you don't have to be. The only difference between the person who becomes great and the person who doesn't is that the person who becomes great kept showing up after it stopped feeling good. Remember this. Greatness isn't earned by talent or ambition. Greatness is earned by your willingness to be visibly bad at something for longer than your ego can stand. That's the thesis. That's the whole thing. That's the door. And the door is open right now. The only question is whether you'll walk through it, and whether you'll stay long enough for it to change you. Being a beginner is not beneath you. Being a beginner is the most honest, most courageous, most necessary thing you will ever choose to be. It is the place where every master started. It is the place where growth lives. And it is the only place where the person you want to become is waiting for you. Stay a student. Choose growth over ease.